Hi there, this is Dylis Guyan, and welcome to my interview this morning with Jonathan Downie. In fact, it's Dr. Jonathan Downie, and I'm interviewing Jonathan as part of the membership showcase from my group Inspired Selling on Facebook. So if you're not in the group Inspired Selling, please go to Facebook, have a look and come and join us. It's specifically for business owners who are selling to bigger businesses and want support, they want to ask questions and collaborate with like-minded people, and of course have the opportunity to showcase your business. And the reason that I'm showcasing Jonathan is because last month he really was the person who interacted in the group the most and brought most value to the group. So Jonathan, welcome. Dr. Jonathan Downie, thank you very much for joining us. And I would just like to mention that Jonathan is an interpreter and an author, and I'm just going to pass over to him to really explain about your journey, Jonathan, how you became an interpreter and how you built that interpreting team. Is that the right expression?
Well, I'm actually what you call a consultant interpreter. So there are roughly two types of interpreters that businesses need to be aware of. The first is you get a normal business or conference interpreter who you would call in, and normally you'll hire them via an agency or perhaps maybe directly online. Another level up is a consultant interpreter, where you're not just hiring that one interpreter, you're saying to them, I have this big meeting coming up, I need a team of interpreters, or can you recommend an interpreter? Or also, one of the things that consultants really like to do is to give people advice on how to get the best value for money from interpreting. My journey with interpreting actually starts a long time ago. Although I look still in my 20s, I'm actually 34. Turned 34 a few weeks ago. And it starts when I was about 18 and I got the chance to interpret as part of my year abroad in France. I was in this church in the north of France that I love really dearly. They gave me the chance to interpret at a Christian youth conference. And we have a saying in interpreting that once you interpret, you either fall in love with it and never want to stop doing it, or you never want to do it again. I was in the former group, and a long story short, I've been in business for about 10 years. And about 18 months ago, after I graduated with the PhD, I realized that because my PhD is on client expectations of interpreters, I thought actually I need to be stepping up. I need to be pushing myself a bit more above the usual, sit and wait for someone to call. So then I got into consulting. I started learning about selling and marketing. And since then, it has really been an incredible ride to realize that there's very little known in public about what interpreters do. And even what we call very basic things, day one or day two ideas from our training can be really enlightening for clients who've never worked with us before. So at the moment, I'm really enjoying helping people understand that, yes, interpreting is an expensive service, but it's far cheaper than the other options. And interpreting done well makes an impact orders of magnitude bigger than your initial spend.
And I have an experience of this myself. In fact, I was speaking at the Generali Bank Innovation Conference a number of years ago in Italy, and off I went. I was all ready. I had my presentation and everything, and they said, you will have an interpreter because not many of these people can speak good English. I said, all right, that's great then. So I was introduced to this lady who was going to be my interpreter. And I said to her, so tell me, do I need to leave a gap? How does this work, in fact? Yeah. She said, well, actually, I'm married to a Geordie. So she said, just speak. And honestly, it was like United Nations. When I got in the room, all of the delegates there were like you with their headphones on. Yeah. And I was like, oh, my word. And literally, I just spoke as I'm speaking to you, and she did the interpretation. It was amazing. I was really, really impressed. And so I guess, although I haven't had much experience, I would say for me, that was a really good experience.
I mean, my home turf now is what we call simultaneous interpreting, which is precisely there. You're in a soundproof booth. Professionally, we'll work in teams of two. One of the things that clients tend not to understand is if we interpret for more than half an hour, just around that half an hour, 35-minute mark, the quality takes a big nosedive,
Right.
because we can actually get minor, repairable, but minor brain damage. So your quality just shoots down, and so we'll swap over around the 20-minute, half an hour mark. And so you do see some clients looking at you going, there's only one of me and there's two of you, what's going on here? And it's because of the amount of strain professional class interpreting takes.
Yeah.
And the kit itself is expensive, but again, the kit is there with simultaneous interpreting to almost allow the speaker to forget that we're there. To let them just run on. I tell speakers all the time, please don't slow down for us. We're taught to deal with medium speed and fast. Slow speaking is actually much harder than fast speaking is, believe it or not.
Right.
Especially if you're professionally trained. I had an experience. I was interpreting an interview with a French musician from the Scottish Parliament, which was live webcast. And you can dig out and you can probably still find it. And he decided that he wanted to be very, very deliberate in his speech. So he was talking like this. And so I was interpreting his very slow French into English, which was then being interpreted into Chinese, and the English was also being webcast.
Right.
So in those situations, you kind of want to sit the speaker down and go, please, speed up.
Yeah.
You only have 8 minutes.
Yeah, because you don't have access to a microphone or anything, do you?
No, well, there used to be on some booths, there used to be a little button saying slow down. I now want a speed up button.
Yeah.
But the normal advice, if someone's never worked with an interpreter before, if they watch BBC newsreaders and keep to that kind of straightforward, natural pace, they'll be absolutely fine.
Right, okay. So tell us about your ideal clients, or give us some examples of people that you've worked with.
Well, my ideal clients that I'm looking for at the moment are people for whom interpreting is the difference between success and failure. Mm-hmm. In November 2016, I can't believe, or 2018, in November 2016, I worked with one client who had a French buyer come over who was wanting to place a very large order. And they had what's called a sales qualification meeting, which is, are your products as good as they look? Let's see around your factory. Let's check that you're not employing any slaves anywhere, and all of these things. And that meeting swung on the meaning of the word quality, which is basically the same in French and English. But it got kind of halfway through the second day, and I realized they were arguing, and they didn't realize why they were arguing. And so I was able to explain, the French person is describing it this way, the British team are describing it this way, and 2 hours later they signed off the deal, and it was worth several £1 million over 7 years. So those kind of clients where the interpreting has to be right are my ideal clients, especially in industries, in kind of technical industries, industries that use a lot of PR and promotion. My own specialism myself is kind of public facing or sales facing meetings, but I'm quite happy as a consultant. If the meeting matters to you, it matters to me. If it's just routine for you, I have other providers that I'm quite happy to send you on to. I really specialise in pulling the teams together for when this has to work. And I love it when clients say, this really has to work. It's like, okay, it's fine. It's okay, we'll make it work.
Yes. So you interpret in board meetings too, don't you?
Yeah, most interpreters will cut their teeth in board meetings. I've done a few myself. I've also done European fisheries policy several times. I've done press conferences, very technical press conferences. I did one where it was for a truck manufacturer, and it was, I was turning British engineer speak in fact, the whole team were turning British engineer speak into, in our case, French press speak. We had Russians doing it for the Russian press.
Right.
And then about 6 months ago, I was consultant on a job for a large French brand who were trying to help all of their staff uphold higher environmental standards. So you had their representatives from all over Europe in the same room trying to discuss together, how do we make this work? And those are the kind of meetings where I'm quite happy to send interpreters to, and quite happy to supply interpreters to. And it's really what matters to this client. I work with event management companies, I work through agencies, but I really want to work more directly with companies that are looking to grow themselves.
Mm-hmm.
because when they're looking to grow, it's much easier to understand straight away from them, what are you looking to achieve here? What's your plan?
Mm.
What comes after this meeting? What's the process before? And the more your interpreters know about the process, the better results we're going to give you.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, global trade is so huge
Yeah.
now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you, let's look at who you would want to be introduced to.
Yeah.
So what type, is it the CEO you want to be introduced to, or you tell us?
I would really like to be introduced to whoever's making the hiring decisions.
Mm-hmm.
There's usually two people involved in a meeting that I need to meet and talk to. The first is who's making the decision making and signing off on this bill. Because at the end of the day, if I impress the sales manager but he's not signing the check, that doesn't help so much.
Of course, you need the decision maker.
I need straight to the decision maker, and also to whoever's running the meeting. To sit in a room with the decision maker and the chair of the meeting at the same time is ideal for me. In almost every company, you need two different contacts, because one person's got the steering wheel and the other person's writing the checks.
Yeah.
And both of them, I would love introductions to both of them, so that I can sit down and find out what's going on, and what are you looking to achieve from this, and what's the bottom line.
So typically, who would they be? If you look back, who would you typically be talking to that you'd like an introduction?
They would be CEOs. They would be oftentimes the chief executive's PA are making a lot of the meeting decisions. They would be executive and senior executives and managing directors. And on some cases, depending, they would be sales managers.
Okay. Excellent. And I hope those who are listening to this are racking their brains and thinking, right, who can I introduce Jonathan to? I've got a meeting on Thursday with a guy, and I will certainly be mentioning you to him. And I've got a number of contacts, in fact, that I could probably put you in touch with.
Excellent. There's one further kind of person, that is professional event managers who are in charge of their own budgets.
Sorry, charge of
their own budgets.
All right, okay,
so
yeah.
If they're managing the event and being able to choose the suppliers at the same time, then they're an ideal contact. I've realised to my cost that there are event managers who write the plan and then send it to someone else to sign off.
Okay.
Ideally, companies with short decision-making trees are very helpful, because then I can get straight into, here's the person that matters to, here's the person who's making the decision, right, let's have a coffee.
Okay. And just a little sort of sales tip for you, if you like, is that early on in your conversation, you should be talking about their buying process.
Yes.
Who's involved? What's the process? And budget, of course.
Yes.
But that will give you clarity as to who you need to be speaking to.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. So tell us then, what's been your greatest success in your business, and how did you achieve it?
My greatest success would probably be between either that meeting a little while ago where I helped a company win a multi-million-pound contract, or one back in December where I was asked to go to France urgently and helped. In that case, it wasn't finalising the contract, but it was helping to reveal the roadblocks that were there to stop the contract being finalised. Okay. At the end of the meeting in December, they hadn't signed off, and I think the French property company who I was working for were a little bit perturbed that they hadn't signed off. But then on the car back, they realised, actually, now we know what the difficulties are. And being able to say to people, actually, you may not have finished the process, but now you know what the next stage is going to be.
And I understand what you said before, and you said interpreting really is the difference between success and failure. Yes. It's not just the interpreting.
No, it's one of the things I actually wrote a book, and one of my signature views is that interpreting is about adding value. For years and years, interpreters have told to be completely neutral and stand back and don't do anything. Actually, the more I interpret, and especially when you're a consultant, the more you realise that you have to understand what's going on in the room. It was great. Now that I'm getting consulting work, it's great to be in that position where you can interface with the client very quickly and say, you can grab them at the first coffee break and say, I've noticed that this meeting's gone off course a little. Are you aware of?
Yeah.
And sometimes the client doesn't even realize their meeting's gone off course.
Mm.
But when we're interpreting, whether we're in the booth or at the table with them, the person who's following the meeting the closest is the interpreter.
Yeah.
We see every single wrinkle that most of your delegates are, playing Angry Birds or something. The only people who have to listen to every single word and follow every single conversation are the interpreters. So it's worth, one of my tips to clients is every tea break, grab the interpreter and say, is everything okay? Have you spotted anything? And we always spot something.
Yeah.
That's what we do for a living, spot something.
Exactly. And I'd just like to touch on you did a PhD on,
yes.
and let me just, and this is the name of your, but it's actually not the name of your book. You did a PhD on client expectations of interpreters.
Yes.
Yeah. Your book is called Being a Successful Interpreter.
Yes.
But just going back to your PhD, what were the key things that came out of that work that you did for your PhD in terms of client expectation?
The key thing that came out from it was that we'd been looking at the question completely wrongly. One of the things that I now say to clients is that I realized in my PhD that there are 3 different ways that you can approach interpreting. There's where it's seen as valuable, but you don't really have an actual need for it. And people would say, how does that happen? It happens quite a lot where it's politically valuable or you're putting interpreting on just for show.
Okay.
And that happens. Then there's the most common form of interpreting is where you need it, but it's just seen as this thing that you wish you didn't need. You just kind of put it in a corner somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I call that incidental interpreting. It's incidental to the meeting. You put the interpreters away in the booth, you lock the door and just leave them to it. Okay. Where the real value comes is when it's highly valuable to you and you realize that you need it. And that is what I call integral interpreting. I'm actually working on a scientific paper on integral interpreting at the moment. And the point of that is that when you see the value in it, you'll invest more in it, not just in cash terms, but in terms of briefing properly, in terms of partnering properly, in terms of looking at having clearer and better hiring processes. One of the greatest things that people can learn is hire the interpreters according to the needs of the meeting, not according to the quickest way. Mm-hmm. So if you've got, for instance, an example that I can pull out is if you realize that you're going to be selling to a lot of people in the same country and you're going to be having a lot of meetings or a lot of conferences, I would highly advise you to either go to a consultant or to hire directly so that you get the same team every time. Mm-hmm. If you go to an agency, the likelihood is you'll get a different team every meeting, which means they have to be rebriefed every time. They have to redo their research every time. Yeah. And considering it's 1 day of research for every day of work, if it's a new client, it's really losing you time and losing you value. Whereas if you've got several meetings coming up and you go to a consultant, the first thing they will do is build you the team that you get to keep subject to availability.
Which makes perfect sense.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And as a consultant, my rule as a consultant is every job is a specialist job.
Mm. So, and do you know what I love about you, Jonathan, is that, and we talked briefly before we started this interview, and I was talking to you about how clients are much more discerning these days and want much more for their money. And the insights that you can bring from your experience and your expertise and your study and the knowledge is huge, absolutely huge. So I can see why you are as successful as you are. Mm-hmm. Because of the insights that you bring and what you've just explained to us there.
Thank you. These are the kind of insights that you get from working with a consultant. And I actually created a course on buying interpreting, which is 6 weeks. It's an email in your inbox once a week for 6 weeks with some giveaways as well to help you put things into practice. And the reason why I did that is that most of the things that interpreters shake their heads and go, oh no, people have done that. People make bad decisions because they don't have the right information. Mm-hmm. When you have the right information in front of you, and I think it's the very first lesson in the course is after you've decided that yes, you need interpreting, the next thing that I teach you is how to know how to hire interpreters for your specific job. And it is a consultant, hire direct, or go to an agency. And no matter which one you're doing, I'm happy to help people with, it's hard to find the right agency if you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
I'm happy for someone to email me and say, look, we've decided we need an agency. Do you know any good ones? Well, obviously I do. I work with a few. You know, or do you know a consultant? It's not in the UK. Who do you know in France who's a good consultant? And of course, you know, if I can't consultant it myself, you as you'll know yourself, you have to know colleagues in your field
Yes, of course.
who can fill in the gaps for you. And if someone says, I've got a job in Russia, of course I'll send them to a Russian consultant. Much easier for them to do it that way than for me to try and find an interpreter in Russia from here.
Yes, yeah. So you mentioned this free resource that you've got. How do people access that?
So there is a link that I will send over to you, which can go in the comments from this. It's a MailChimp link, and as soon as you sign up, there'll just be a quick confirm email, and every week it just drops in your inbox. Okay. And it's a completely free sign up.
So this is for anybody really who wants interpreting services and how to really access the best interpreters. Yeah.
It's called Buying Interpreting Step by Step. So anyone who's looking at buying interpreting at any stage, it deliberately takes you through the process fairly slowly so that you've got time to digest it and time to try it out. And it finishes with, I actually created a little wall chart that you can laminate and put up on your wall so you can tick off the stages as you do them. Right. I don't know about anyone else, but I like to tick things off to remind me that I've done things.
Yeah, I'm a ticker offer too. Fantastic. So, Jonathan, where can people get in touch with you if anybody's listening to this and thinking, this is exactly what we need and we need to be talking to Jonathan?
Well, they can go straight onto my website for more information, which is www.integritylanguages.co.uk. And I will get a post up with a link in the next few minutes after this. Okay. They can email me, which is jonathan@integritylanguages.co.uk. Or if you're just looking for ongoing tips and help, just look me up on LinkedIn. I'm really easy to find there. And now I'm trying to every day post something new every day on LinkedIn with the kind of tips. Not the tips that you'll get in the course, but the kind of case studies and tips that you're seeing in everyday interpreting.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Jonathan, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you and to get these insights from you like this. So it's been an utter pleasure. And again, if any of you are not part of our Facebook group, Inspired Selling, please come along to Facebook. Just search for Inspired Selling and we'd love to have you as part of the community. Thanks again, Jonathan, and look forward to seeing you inside the group.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.